This is a conversation we've been having this entire morning as we wrap up Heritage Month, which has been themed celebrating South Africa's literary classics in the Year of Indigenous Languages. We talk to people who actively work on bringing South African languages to life. Veronica Klipp is the head of the Wits Press. Welcome and thanks for coming through. And Lorato Trok is an author. Thank you so much, Lorato, for making the time to come through on the Saturday. We know you have an event this afternoon about your book, Against the Odds. Tell us about it.
Well, this book, it was published now in July. So I wrote a book about Mayor Rosina Sedibane Modiba, who was the first black female athlete in the 70s to run against in the multiracial races and set multiple records then. And she was denied the accolades by the apartheid government. And there's a school in Lodium that's named after her, a sports school in Pretoria in Lodium. That's named after her, and there's just absolutely no literature available on her. This is the first book that's available on Rosina.
Is this the same lady you came here with?
Yeah.
We should have brought her in. I should ask our producers to please bring her in, because I think she forms an integral part of this conversation. Because I'm looking at the picture on the book and the cover, and I'm thinking that's the same person you walked in with. It's a fantastic story, and we will go deeper into it when she comes in. But as a writer, how have you been engaging with this theme of celebrating South Africa's literary classics, but also taking the conversation forward?
You know, my background is in early literacy. So I work for Puku Children's Literature Foundation, where we get children's books. We review children's books in African languages, especially because we just don't have that for African languages. And children's books are actually books that it's literature that's not, in South Africa, is not really given airtime and all that stuff that's happening now. So what we do is we engage a lot with African languages, because there's just no platform for books, especially children's literature, that's available out there to the masses, in the mainstream especially.
What are your thoughts about the current efforts within the basic education system to revive childhood education?
Well, I think it's good, but it's not enough. What I think is that we should involve a lot of people who have been working in this space for a long time. What the government needs to do is they need to invest in the work that is already there, and get the people who are already working in this space to get them to tell them what is it that they've been doing all along.
Not reinvent the wheel.
Not to reinvent the wheel,
Veronica, let's bring you in. You've also got a lovely array of books, and I don't know if our cameras can come in and just zone in on them. I think I'm going to try and get up, if that's okay. My producers can tell me on the line. I wanted to talk to you about what you do, but I'm just so excited about these titles. The Cape Radicals by Crane Sodine, Being Black in the World by Chabane Mangani, Lie on Your Wounds, and it's got a picture there of a very well-known South African personality, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, The Dances of the Dung Beetles, Radio Soundings. Tell us about all these books.
Okay, so
you can tell I love reading.
Yes, no, that's really great to hear, and thanks for promoting books. So we are a university press, and what we do is we publish research, but we try and make it accessible to a wider audience. And so, as you can see from the book, some are aimed at academic audiences, others are books that the general public would be interested in. Lie on Your Wounds, for example, is the prison correspondence of Sobukwe, which hasn't been published before. The letters were sitting in an archive at Wits, and so it really gives an insight into his experience on Robben Island, and really shows him on a very personal and human way.
So, you know, South Africa has always got two sides. We talk about inequality, we talk about the missing middle.
Yes.
How do we fill in that gap between this sort of writing that brings young people into the literary world and advanced and specialized scientific writing?
Well, I think a lot of what we do really is try to make the research accessible. So we spend a lot of time on editing texts and manuscripts, sometimes based on very specialist research, but to make it accessible to ordinary readers. So that is really what we focus on and we talk about scholarly literature based on research, but for a wider audience.
Okay, I'm just going to break a bit to try and have a conversation with my producers about whether we're bringing in Rosina Sedibane Modiba, because we really want her to be part of this conversation. I don't know how far they are with working on that. Do I have an indication? Is she coming in? Okay, all right. So how has academia, we spoke earlier to a representative of the University of Pretoria, how is academia engaging with this theme of this Heritage Month in terms of bringing South Africa's heritage alive using literary works?
Well, I mean, I think universities are extremely active in their research functions, and South African research outputs are growing on an annual basis, supported by government policy as well, it has to be said. But I mean, I think that the universities are trying to uncover hidden stories and hidden histories and counter narratives that certainly up until the 1990s had to some extent been ignored. And we see our role in there very much, which is why, for example, we bring back a book that Shabani Manganye published in the 1970s, Being Black in the World, because that didn't really have a wide reception under apartheid, but it's still very relevant, especially post Fees Must Fall and talking about humanity and equality in South Africa.
So in telling the story of the South African society, the challenges you're saying based on old literary works, is that the challenges are still the same?
They are. I think they generally are, although I think the kind of authors that are being published now, that has really grown. There are far more black authors being published. And we try and target, also early career academics. The universities are trying to transform, the professorship. And that is an active strategy of ours as well.
Let's talk about the quality and the credibility of these new authors coming in. And Lorato, you can start off.
I'm actually excited about what the young black people that are coming up when they are writing. People are very excited to write their own stories, like as I did with Rosina's story, because so many people didn't know about her life. And
is this your first publication?
No, this is not my first. This is my first publication in young adults.
Okay.
But I've published a whole lot of other books in children's literature. So I'm very excited about young people coming up and writing stories that they can relate to, as this has happened with Rosina's story, because these are the stories these are the people that live in our communities, but we hardly hear what is it that they've accomplished then, during that difficult time.
And your thoughts about the quality and the credibility of the authors coming up, Veronica?
I think there's no question about the quality. I mean, in scholarly publishing, there are very stringent criteria applied before a book gets published. There's a peer review process. The quality and credibility, that's the test really for it. So I don't think that's in question at all. The issue is perhaps to make that writing accessible and to turn often PhD theses into monographs or into books that people can read and in an accessible way. Yeah, and so we're putting a lot of, as I say, energy and time into that.
So previously, if you wanted access to, as you just said, a PhD thesis, you'd have to go to some dingy corner at the back of a huge library and search for it. What is being done to create this accessibility?
Well, for example, at Wits University with the Faculty of Humanities, they've put money behind a program where the best theses are being selected, and they're putting money in to help the authors develop their writing and turn it from a thesis, which is usually very long, very complex, full of theory, into a book that is more accessible to a general public. And that's a long-term process. The development can take 6 months or longer, and then, we would still take it through editing and the whole production process.
Lorato, why should South Africans be excited about Against the Odds? I think I'm just going to try put it up just so our camera person can pick up the imaging on it.
Every South African must read this book, a copy of this book. It's fascinating. The story of Rosina, this young girl from Atteridgeville who no one knew, who set multiple records, who shamed the apartheid government then, but who was, you know, just they took so much from her, but she persisted. She went on and set multiple records and won so many times. So everyone must read this book, especially our young people who really don't know the background, where we come from, the history of our country and so on. And Rosina is just the everyday people that live within our communities, that these young people will actually resonate. The story will resonate with people in our communities.
In fact, as we speak, everybody, well, not every South African, but a big chunk is watching the rugby match between South Africa and Namibia in Japan. So these are the kind of stories that people get excited about. And to think this wasn't spoken about is unimaginable.
It's unimaginable that, you know, young people now today, they see what we have accomplished as a country today, but they don't know where we come from as a country.
So we're excited to say Rosina has just joined us now. Thank you so much for coming through today. It's totally amazing to learn about your story. Tell us about it.
Thank you, Desiree. My name is Rosina Sedibane Modiba. I used to be an athlete during the 70s when there was an apartheid. Then during our time, the games, we were separated. We had our own organization. The whites had their own organization. And then during that time, I used to run the following event: 400, 800, 1,500, and 3,000, the events that are run by Casta now.
Yeah.
And then
In fact, as we started talking, I was thinking the Casta of that era.
Yes, that is why I very much honor Casta, because it's running my events. And then during that time, I was a record holder in our side for the 4 events, the 400, 800, 1,500.
You were the record holder.
The record holder.
That is
and
no
the 3,000.
Small feat.
Yes, that time. And then that time we were running alone, they were running alone. Then we were supposed, when times goes on, because we were there, we were running, we have the whole opportunity, we have the strength that they have, then our times was equals to them. Then they started to invite us to their meetings because we were matching their times. They couldn't ignore us. Then we were invited to their meetings, to their competition, because our times were the same as theirs. Therefore, then I started to run with them, then compete with them, challenge them. And then I was the first black woman to run against the white. And then the first black woman to hold a national title during that time. Then that was when we were not allowed. And then that time, when I was running, the spectators were only whites. My parents were not there, no black, and the only blacks that were there were only men athletes, because they were from the mines. And then they used to be there involved in athletics because they were from the mines. The mines were involved them in the sporting activity, because we used to run in the mines, because the mines, they were the only place where they have the tracks for the blacks.
So you come in to compete with white athletes. Are you allowed into the changing rooms? Where do you have access to? Because there are rules in place at that time restricting your movement as a black person.
By then, because now they have invited me to run with them, they couldn't segregate the locker room. We were together in the locker rooms because they couldn't say the blacks and the white, because the stadiums were the white, for the whites.
How was that experience for you?
It was so tough. But the main thing, I just wanted to show them we were also the same as they are. Then I just wanted to show them I have the same potential as they have. I can beat them. That's what I had in mind.
And then you get to win?
Yes, winning alone. Then no one was sharing me. My parents were just there at home, and my siblings, they couldn't share me up.
And did you get to travel overseas?
No, I didn't go overseas.
So you win, and there's recognition that can't be publicized. How did that feel?
Oh, it was sad because now you're there, you are a winner. Only the black newspapers will say something about you, but the others not say anything about you until you beat them to the last. That when I got the national title, then all the beer, the blood, ochen blood and everything, they start to talk about me. And then they said it in Afrikaans. Die eerste soort vrou I forget now.
How far did your career go, and at what point did you decide, I'm not pursuing this anymore?
The injury. The only thing that put me off was the injury. I was on the peak of my potential, my everything. Then the injury put me off because by then it was the time that I was supposed to follow Sydney Marie in the USA.
The Sydney Marie era?
Yes,
oh, wow.
Yes, that was on my teammate.
Yes.
We have the team that we used to call it the Dream Team, was coached by Mr. Mokoka, who was then, he wanted to show the world, he wanted to show South Africa that black women can compete just like the white women. That was our coach.
How did you feel when you couldn't continue?
Oh, it was so bad because, the doctors kept on saying, no, you'll continue. Then trying to train every day, wake up and train, but I couldn't get that, the potential that it was meant for competition.
So now, Lorato comes across and says, everybody forgets about this amazing story. Nobody ever talks about it. And Lorato comes and approaches you and says, I want to tell the story. Lorato, perhaps you can come in this conversation as well. How did it come about?
So I was working at Rosina School. She was a teacher at Batokwa Primary School in Atteridgeville. So I was involved in a project where we were piloting some African children's books on the digital platforms. And I got to the school and I did not know anything about her as well, like every South African now I gathered. And the librarian told me that, do you know Rosina? And I was like, how am I supposed to know Rosina? And she told me that Rosina used to run and so on. And I didn't even know that there was a school named after her until later. When they told me that there was a school named after her, I was like, but how do I not know about Rosina? I should actually have read about her when I was in high school. And I kept saying, that was 2013. And I kept saying to her that I'm going to write your story one day, Rosina. But then there were so many things that I was doing as well. And then I applied for a writing grant from ANFASA in 2017. And I was one of the 12 people who got the grant. That's when I started writing her story. And when I was writing her story, I couldn't believe some of the things that she accomplished because I also didn't know anything. It was when I was doing my research on her, about her, that I learned that she is so much bigger than just the school being named after her.
Okay, you're watching the agenda. We're having a conversation about the wrapping up of Heritage Month and looking at different aspects of South African literature. I think we're going to take a break now and come back and continue this conversation.